And welcome back to Masters of Modern. I'm your host, Alex Kessler, here with my co-hosts, Ben Bateman and Michael Grothy. Today, we have many things to talk about, serious things that you may have noticed that are slightly different around us. And also lands. We're going to talk about lands today. Lands is the major overall subject matter. Plus, for the hot take, there's going to be a fun game, so make sure on Monday to check that out. But you may have noticed we have a new logo, and then kind of a new name to an extent, but not really, but kind of. I even introed this wrong with that in mind. So welcome to.
Do you want to start over?
To the Cast podcast. No, I like all this. This is for the public. Welcome to the Cast. We have realized that over the last, few years we've been using the Cast is basically how we refer to ourselves, other than very specifically the intro and then just like copy that exists on the internet. If you look at most social, it's the Cast, and we've also had our logo since 2015 and is like very associated with kind of what the Command Zone has as their logo. And we wanted to kind of, as we've now stepped away from doing exclusively modern content, we felt like we wanted to include some level of a brand that kind of encompasses everything, so people, when they see us, are like, oh, they only make modern content, I'm not interested. Because we're doing Commander every Monday, we're doing a bunch of historic streams and just drafts and streams online. We do like editorial videos once in a while, and even this podcast has become more about how we play Magic and how we hope people that listen to us like to play Magic, and the different versions of Magic that we're playing versus just Modern, especially in a time when playing Modern is hard, right? Unless you have a PC with Moto on it, and a robust Moto account, it's kind of really hard to play Modern, so most people aren't, including us, and just want more of the freedom to talk about everything. And really just to let people know who want to find us that we're talking about anything, not just Modern.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's been, we've started to get comfortable talking about all different Magic subjects, and so we felt it was time. We're very excited about it. Our whole logo design is all designed by Jacob Patrick. You can find him on Instagram at @JPDs, so give him a shout. Let him know how cool and stoked you are on the new logo. He's a good friend of mine who does incredible work for a lot of the stuff I work on, and shout him out. Let him know that you like the logo. It would mean a lot to us. Thanks, Jacob, for all the hard work.
Yeah, and I think it's really cool. I like that there's like a subtle Star Wars nod in the logo. I like the use of the lightning bolt. We're keeping the lightning bolt. It's the best. I think it's the purest Magic card ever printed. I don't think I would argue. I'd be hard pressed to say there's another card that's more Magic than a lightning bolt.
So iconic, so few words. It's in alpha. What more do you want?
But it's not like Ancestral Recall, right? Where like this card can't be played in any format ever because it breaks the game in half.
Right.
It's just generically the best at it and great, and I love it.
Right.
What are your favorite?
It's good, but not at like an overwhelming power level, right? It's like
it was the middle.
You love to cast it. You don't feel terrible when it gets cast on you. Like it's just great. It's like simple perfect in what it does. Like Llanowar Elves is a contender, but it's like
also really good.
It's complicated.
Also, elves are on every set. Literally any set has lightning. You'd have to have a very specific world that lightning can't be on it.
No clouds.
So let me ask you guys this. So big. First of all, big time shout out to the Nobles of House Modern, all of the patrons that provide all the content that we do here. Pinkies out to the Nobles, who we do a little hangout with in the Discord before the show every single week.
One of the ideas for this episode that we had, and it was almost honestly the episode idea that we had spawned off of this, is over the weekend was Command Fest online with Channel Fireball, and they had me on to do played a game of Commander on the stream. That was really awesome. I got to get my face stomped in by a full-on CDH Tiny Bones deck while from someone from the 99 YouTube channel, and then Talia Vest, me, and Mana Chase from Mana Curves all just like did nothing for a game as our hands were disrupted by Tiny Bones, and it was very Dragon Ball Z tournament. No one was ready to handle what was happening, but that was awesome. And then on Sunday we did a panel, and Ben, you were on, and we did it with Ashlyn and Tappy and Jim from Spike Feeders, who we've had on our Commander stream. We just talked about like getting into Commander and that kind of thing. And at the end of the episode, we did this whole thing where we asked a bunch of dumb questions, lightning, fire, and one of those questions ended up being how many lands is the average amount of lands that you play in your Commander decks? And then everyone answered, and then CFB asked that question on the internet, and it ended up causing a greater conversation online where pros started leaning in. Yeah.
So I didn't see this. How many lands are people usually playing in their deck? What's like
my answer was 38, which seemed to be the one that most people were like, that's the correct amount. But so Jim said 32 because in CDH, and then like 30.
But yeah, he's playing like 7/0 mana rocks, right? So
and then Ashley I think said 36 and Tappy said not enough, which I think is also the objectively correct answer.
Yeah, that's if you asked me how many were in my deck, I would probably say like, oh well, it's a deck that plays a lot of lands, probably like 40, honestly, and then I'll count and it'll be like 35.
Right. Well, like I have the habit of like not being able to cut a card and then be like, you know what, maybe this top technically counts as a land, and maybe this Enlightened Tutor, I can find Soul Ring with this Enlightened Tutor, that's a land.
I'm playing 5 mana rocks, that's like a land.
See, those are each, at least just one. I have like 4 bounce lands, that's 2 lands. They draw you a card.
I think the truth of like that whole idea, what you just said about Enlightened Tutor finding Soul Ring is kind of a joke, as like an aside that I find particularly funny is anytime you ever justify making a decision in deck building that's like, well, worst case scenario, this thing does this, you never, ever, 100% of the time use it for that thing. So it's actually an invalid idea. Like, I can think of plenty of times I've put Tainted Pact in a deck, and I'm like, well, in worst case, Tainted Pact just cycles, right? It just draws you a card. But like, you're never going to cast Tainted Pact to cycle when you need a land. You're not going to do it. You're going to be like, this is way too valuable. I'll hold on to this and just miss my land drop if I have to.
Right.
And the same for,
And Enlightened Tutor is a perfect example like that. Well, like, and I did a poll after it, like, Channel Fireball and everyone was talking about it, and then, like, Sam Black quote tweeted in and was like, I don't get why Commander players don't play more than 35 lands. If I were playing, 40 lands would be my minimum. And then, like, people started arguing with him because they're like, no, I have mana rocks. He's like, I was counting mana rocks. Whole thing happened on the internet. It was fascinating. It was cool that I had started that with a dumb question during the panel that we had. So what I wanted to do for this episode, and we have a little bit of the land conversation we just had, was ask some of these questions, and I got a bunch of new ones just for fun. As a little bit as this episode is the like new logo episode, it would be more of like a personality fun, silly episode. And then we'll talk about Magic stuff.
We don't talk about Magic anymore. We just ask fun questions now. Rebrand.
But obviously these are all Magic related, including stuff like how many lands is the right amount of lands to play in a deck. And generally I've leaned towards as close to 40% as possible. And when you have an argument to play more than that, that is correct.
Interesting. So
like cycle lands, that lets you go to 42, right? Like cycle lands shouldn't replace regular lands. They should replace spells and then be something that you're willing to just cycle when you need to.
But I just think so. Okay, so for me, it completely depends. A, format. B, style of deck. Right. So like I know from what you're saying and what is so consistent with like a lot of the people we like to play with, that you are willing to play cycle lands. You're willing to play lands that maybe enter tapped or are colorless because they're very valuable. Whereas like the way I construct decks in my mind, I like never, ever want to end a turn with like a land I didn't use, unless I'm just like holding open counter magic. I didn't have to use that turn. So I like want every land to come in untapped. I want them all to cast all of my cards. And I'm like almost unwilling to play any other way, which means like I want to play as few lands as possible. And the lands I play cannot have any function that does not allow me to play that game plan. So like a tapped cycling land, for instance, or a Triome, which is, similar, like a tapped cycling land, I like can't get behind it. Like it stresses me out to see them in my opening hand because it means like I'm not going to come out consistently.
I also think if you're playing a lot of cheap cantrips, like Legacy Delver decks or like modern or standard like Sprite Dragon decks, you're prone to flooding out because so much of your deck is just like these opts or ponders or crash throughs or whatever that don't do anything. And so you're just like, okay, I'm going to keep this hand. It has a couple of cantrips. It has a couple of lands and like a Soulscar Mage or something. So I'm going to like play my Soulscar Mage. Oh no, it got bolted. Okay, land. Put it on the bottom. Land. Crash through. Land. Okay, now I'm mana flooded and I lose the game.
Yeah.
You just have so many cards that don't do anything. You cannot afford to get mana screwed. So those decks are typically playing like 20 lands or less, especially in Legacy where you have access to Brainstorm.
Yeah, I mean the modern Blitz blue-red prowess deck basically is playing 18 lands, right?
And in standard it's usually closer to 20, like the standard blue-red Sprite Dragon decks.
And I think the point of like what's your average CMC plus how many cantrips you have is like a huge kind of differentiator here, right? Like if you're aiming to cast only 1 and 2 drops, which literally this Sprite deck is. The most expensive cards in the deck are Bedlam Reveler and Stormwing Entity, which are a 2-drop and a 2-drop most of the time, half the time. And
Bedlam Reveler is, you're casting it for more than 2,
a lot of the time.
But not a lot of the time, but like a significant amount of the time.
This deck has 3 Gut Shots, 4 Mutagenic Growths, 4 Manamorphose. I feel like it's actually casting it 4-2 more often than most decks playing Bedlam Reveler.
But it's like, Treasure Cruise is just Ancestral Recall, right? But that's not true. I've cast a Treasure Cruise for 3. I've cast a Treasure Cruise for 4. Sure. Like when it was legal in Modern, and like obviously you're playing to maximize it. Can you play it for 1? Yeah. Yes, but you play it for 3, and you're like, fine.
But the point is that this deck doesn't really need more than 2 to 4 lands, right? Ever in the entire game. In fact, if they draw more than that, they're negatively affected. Their chances of winning.
And they are, in Modern at least, playing Cycle Lands because they're playing Islets, right?
They are playing 3 Fire Islets, yes.
So theoretically, you're playing Cycling Lands, but you're still only at 18 because you just cannot afford to spend effectively 2 mana to cycle them.
Well, I think
it's like depends on the style of deck that you're playing. I mean, when I mentioned,
when I was saying Cycling Lands, I meant actual cycling lands, like ones that come into play tapped, right? Those are ones that I would not play over an untapped mana source. I think that's too much.
I mean, people are not playing those very often in Modern. Correct. Except in like Jund decks or decks with Life in the Loam in them or something.
Mm-hmm. And I think those untapped, like the Fiery Islets of the world, Waterlogged Groves, I mean, that's why those lands are so special. It's why Horizon Canopy was so popular for such a long time, is because effectively it allows you to do both the things we're talking about. It allows you to play 21, 22 lands in a deck if you want to, while also having the versatility to channel that into more gas later in the game. I mean, and obviously that's why they don't tap for anything other than, pay life.
And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, though, you have in Modern, the Uro pile decks, right? Where it's just like Field of the Dead, 4 Uro, and taking advantage of, the Mystic Sanctuary. And they're, on average paying 27 lands. So that's...
I believe Uro Pile is the official name of a deck in every single format in Magic now.
Yes.
It's not a Modern thing. You can play an Uro Pile in Historic or Standard, Pioneer, Legacy, probably Vintage. I don't know enough about Vintage, but probably, right?
Uro has crept up on my list now, I think, of my 10 most hated Magic cards of all time. It might have even made top 5 by now. I hate that card. I can't even begin to tell you when it comes down against me. I cringe in a way that's just like, I don't even want to play this game anymore. It's never going to work out for me. Like this is going to end in you beating me by like 6 life probably. And everything I draw is going to feel invalidated. I would put it in my probably top 5 most hated cards of all time.
Well, and it's not like the type of card you're looking to cast either, because it wants you to play like 27 lands.
Yeah.
Have you thought of playing Cling to Dust?
I'm now in the new version of the deck I've just put together. I'm playing 2 in the main deck.
I saw something cool actually in the Artisan. There's an Artisan event on Arena right now, which is so this is standard 2021 Artisan, so it's like everything that's not rotating that's in standard, and then Artisan comes in uncommons only. And I had an opponent who was playing all of the like M21. If you gain at the beginning of your end step, if you gain 3 or more life, do the thing. And they were playing Cling to Dust in their deck, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so good. They're making like so many Griffins, I'm never going to win. And I did not win. Like the number 3 on that card, I just figured like, it's relevant in aggro matchups because you can gain a few life. But the number 3, They did it. They did the thing where they like test stuff.
I have an Arena Historic Dredge list that's taking advantage of Uro gaining 3 life, and when you mill it, you do 3 damage and gain 3 life. Creeping Chill. And I'm playing the zombie, the 3/1 that comes back every time you gain 3 life.
The vampire zombie.
The vampire zombie. So there's now vampire spirit and vampire zombie, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's
Spirit Zombie is up next.
There's
no Spirit Zombie, right?
No. I need a vampire skeleton, I think would be the next.
There is a vampire skeleton. Skeletal vampire.
Oh yeah, you're right. We're making our way down the list. They're just hitting up all the stops. But yeah, so what I think is interesting though is so just between those 2 decks, and I think if you actually were to like add all this together,
there is a zombie spirit.
There is a zombie spirit.
Yeah, I was looking it up.
What is it?
It's Great Board Muse.
Oh yeah. There you go. All the stops. Black just gets to shuffle whatever they want because everything is just a different dead thing.
Yeah.
They're just layers of dead. But
I'm gonna look up all these weird combinations now.
Is there a skeleton zombie?
You can continue.
I bet there's not a skeleton zombie. That sounds ridiculous.
No, there definitely is. I remember seeing this card when it came out, but I don't remember the name. Oh my gosh, there's not. I could have sworn.
All right. That's
zombie.
What's next. All right, we figured it out. But in Modern, it looks like, in general, the average amount of lands people are playing are something around 23, right? And like, these are the two extremes. And right now, Modern is very stratified between these two decks as the two most played. But even then, there's 6 and 7% of the metagame. So it's not even that extreme. But any Uro deck, you want to have more lands. As you guys said, more cantrips or low-cost things. You want less lands because you don't want to flood out. And I think the idea between lands that come into play tapped is that they prevent flooding out, right? Like, in Jund, Raging Ravine is always your flood out answer, or cycle lands or whatever, making it so that you always have something that does something. And in Abzan, it was the put a +1/+1 counter on all your Birds of Paradise because you play all these elves or ramp spells that you need to be able to do something with. So it's always kind of just like a conversation of, do you want to get mana screwed sometimes, but then always draw gas? Yes, or do you want to flood out, but then mitigate that by having lands that do things? And in Commander, I think what we were talking about before, cutting cards is really hard in Singleton, right? Like, literally, one of my favorite things to tweet is just as I get new cards and update decks, how to have other people cut cards for me because I can't decide. And, like, the easiest thing to do is be like, oh, I'm playing, like, 3 almost lands. That's a land. I can cut a land. And then, like, you do that 4 times, and now you're at 32 lands in your deck. And you're like, oh, I, like, get mana screwed every game. Why is that happening? And then you count. I mean, I did this with you, Ben. We were on the airplane. We were playing Highlander Roulette, and I lost every single game for the entire airplane ride. At the very end of it, I was like, why do I keep getting mana screwed? And I counted, and I think the average land count was like 28 in my 6
and you're supposed to be playing
card Singleton decks. And so I added a bunch of lands, and then literally the next time we played, all I did was add lands, and then I like stomped Ben's face. It was great.
Are you guys more willing to play? So are you guys more willing to play more lands, like in that 40% plus range in Commander because it's slower and like having more lands, having more mana, bigger effects is more valuable, or does it adjust for you in Commander?
This was kind of the conversation. People were arguing that Commander is more forgiving you for playing less lands because people will generally ignore you if you're like, oh man, I'm mana screwed. People just won't attack you because they'll feel bad. So you have more time to draw cards. But kind of what pros were arguing was the other hand, which is like, you have a Commander, so you can't get flooded out really because you always have the option of playing whatever is in your command zone, not just once like Companion, but multiple times. And so therefore, why not go up to 40 lands? And
so I agree. I also think that like the types of things that you're playing in Commander are typically like big splashy effects that are like, drawing a lot of cards or generating a lot of value in some way, giving you mana sinks, like, even something like Sun Forger or whatever. Like, you just have so many ways to spend mana in your deck that all you need to do is hit your land drops and you'll be able to spend it. Not just because you have a Commander, but also because of the types of effects that are prevalent in Commander. And I think this does carry over to like the Uro piles. Like, obviously Uro asks you to have more lands in your deck because you have to hit your 3rd land and have a 4th land already ready to go for when you play Uro and put it into play. And chances are, in most decks that play Uro, you also want to hit that 5th land, right? So he's like, Uro is explicitly encouraging you to put lands in your deck because he says, like, put a land from your hand onto the battlefield. But Uro is also encouraging you to put lands in your deck because if you just hit your land drops and, like, play a handful of spells, Uro will just do everything else for you. Like, you don't need to make sure you're still drawing relevant cards because Uro does things. And this was even more exacerbated when Field of the Dead was legal in Historic. And these Field of the Dead decks in Modern are now doing this, the last Field of the Dead format. But because, like, just playing lands is enough. Like, you don't need to do anything else. And I think because your effects are so big, because your effects are Uro, they're like drawing you a card every turn and gaining you life and maybe ramping you, and they come back from the graveyard if they die. And a lot of the cards in Commander are also like that. Uro is like the best on rate and also just does everything. But I think that like a lot of the effects you're playing in Commander are like, I'm trying to think of like Commander staples Ristic Study or something, where like you're just drawing so many cards, all you got to do is play lands, and you can play all your cards. You'll have enough cards forever.
Right.
I feel like there is so much design now that is oriented around. We've talked about this before, allowing you to play early and play late. Right. That's like so much of what design seems to focus on now. So you look at a lot of the cards that get played, and it's like it's the saga where you search for planes, make a 0/4 gain life. Or if you look at like something like incubation and congruity, it's like look for a creature, because creature or land on that card on the front side, right? Versus like exile something later. Or you look at something like Uro, where it's like, this is early, is gonna like get me life, it's gonna get me a card and land, whatnot. And I think that there's a point there, right? Is that they don't want you to have to play a certain number of lands to play Magic. They want you to have the variety of constructing your deck in such a way that early game, even if you do draw 2 lands, you're still going to be okay long game.
So I actually disagree with you on the design philosophy they've added. I think if you look at the last year, they've more leaned toward, because they've like stopped with cantrips as much, right? Like they're no longer giving you hand sculpting tools. It feels more like they've leaned towards play more lands, right? You have Growth Spiral, Uro, but also you have a lot of really powerful Hellraiser. Arboreal Grazer. But you also have a lot of powerful lands that do stuff. More than like probably any standard I've ever played in. This has all 5 castles. This has all 5 of the like lands that when they enter play, if you have 4, a Mystic Sanctuary cycle, you have 2 sets of cycling lands in the format, at least one that's in historic. So 1 set of cycling lands. Like you have all these lands that almost all benefit you from going up in how many lands you're playing, plus cards that also benefit that. And even stuff like Uro and Kroxa are both like, you will always have stuff to do with the lands you have. If you get mana flooded, we will provide you with value. We'd rather you play more lands than get mana screwed. And I think that in some ways is a response to like the Pro Tour that LSV lost, right? Where he like just got mana screwed. He like didn't draw more than 2 lands in the last 2 games of the Pro Tour. And like
I also think it's like kind of what is a problem with our game that causes people to want to play Hearthstone or Legends of Runeterra? Like why would people, quit Magic to play those games? Or why would they decide like, oh, you know what, I'm going to try card games. Let me try a couple and see what I like. What's gravitating people away from Magic? And my guess is the mana system can be frustrating. I think people who appreciate Magic appreciate the mana system. They appreciate that, like, there are a lot of strategic decisions about, like, how many lands you're putting in your deck and how you're playing your lands and how you're mulliganing and how you can, I think that when you're getting started, it can just be so frustrating to just, like, have games where you just don't play. And you're like, oh, this game's all luck. Like, my opponent got lucky and I didn't and whatever, and I'm over it,
And I think the colors of land, like lands are also a cost of the color system, which I think is the best part about Magic, right? Like,
yeah,
something that Magic has that other games don't is any deck can play red, but you have to have the resources to be able to play it. And that allows you to balance the game you're playing, but it also makes it so like no metagame should ever just be one deck, and that's why they don't like fetch lands in standard with dual lands, because like that's when it's a 4-color deck. Right? That's why they didn't like Mirrodin, because it was only one deck was possibly to be the best. And when each color is forcing you away from each other, you can play with 2 different, like the metagame is always going to be more diverse than something where just like you could play every card and then you just have the best deck. But you have more choices to be able to build stuff than something like Hearthstone, where I can't play wizard cards in my necromancer deck. They're just I can never combine those 2 cards, so any cool idea that would use both of them is just not available.
Yeah, I mean, I think the customizability and backwards compatibility of Magic is what makes it the most interesting game. I would agree with you. The complexity of Magic is essentially why we love it. It's also why it took them this many years to make Arena. It's legitimately like, and kind of like, I mean, Moto came out and like, but Moto like just was a lot less pleasing to play and like didn't look nearly as good. It like didn't function in the way, because a lot of the stuff that was complicated about this game, as you mentioned, got taken away and became Hearthstone. It's a game that is very similar without a lot of the complexities of Magic.
A lot of games, both digital and paper, that are like similar to Magic they don't do the mana system. You either get a mana every turn, you can play any card face down as a land, but it's like Alex said, it reduces a lot of the like deck building choices that you get, because you're locked into a particular class or a particular color combo or whatever, and you can only play from these 2 combos. But in Magic, you can build a 5-color deck, you can build an all artifact deck, you can build whatever combination, and you just have to be willing to like play a bunch of tapped lands or have your mana be really inconsistent or whatever.
And I have to tell you, Michael, I'm going to just interrupt you for a second. With the way that it's framed, it looks for a second like Peanut was a tiny little like a demon from the Golden Compass and was on your shoulder, because in the background Peanut was like walking onto your body. That was great. Anyway, but to go back to the point you were go ahead, Alex.
I was going to say, and kind of your point at the beginning with Birth of Meletus, right, where this is a card that is built to mitigate mana flood, or built to mitigate mana screw, right? And that's what it feels like Wizards is trying to do, is like at every level, from the new Mulligan rule to the cards that they're designing, and then the benefits to playing those cards, erase mana screw and reduce that from the game, allowing you to play with more cards, right? The Black Castle lets you play that as an extra land. If you go up to 25 lands from 24 lands for that, it now starts drawing you cards every turn, and which helps mitigate that. So I think that's one of the reasons. And I don't think that's going away, right? We're about to go to Zendikar, the plane of lands that do stuff.
I agree. And I was going to say, I agree with you, Alex. And I think that, like, when you talk about that complexity that is removed from a lot of the other TCGs that compete with Magic, what you lose is the ability to play those weird decks that take advantage of, like, land grant. I mean, like Charbelcher decks, like, it's a good example where it's just like sort of the whole construction, the idea of that deck is something that's basically taking advantage of the fact that playing more or playing less lands, the treasure hunt decks you play against right now in Historic, like with Zombie Infestation, those decks are playing 1 million lands. Like, you look at, I literally lost today to New Perspectives Lotus Field with 1 million cyclers, and they killed me on turn 4, and I was like, what is this? And I was like, the whole deck is cycling lands. The entire deck is just cycling lands.
I lost to Treasure Hunt Islands and won Thassa's Oracle last night playing Historic, and I'm just like, I didn't have it.
That's what's cool about it, right?
Yeah.
Don't you think, like, because to me, like, that's the thing that makes Magic is being able to build something like that, coming up with that idea and working on the margins of what you're supposed to do in 60 or 100 cards with roughly 40% lands, and saying, you know what, I'm not going to play 40% lands, I'm going to play 5%, or I'm going to play 90%, and I'm going to make it work with what I want to do.
Well, and I don't think those decks are going away. I mean, we just said it, right? Like, that deck exists in Historic and Standard. What is going away through this, I think, is more of the like micro decision tempo decks. Like, I think like Legacy Delver, where I play a 1-drop and then I wasteland my opponent out for the game and or bounce everything else that they play or counter it, is the type of play style that's getting hurt the most by this. But at the same time, the second most played deck in Modern is a Delver deck. It's not playing Delver, but it's a Delver deck.
I mean, makes me sad because that's my favorite style of Magic to play. I'm
I don't think
devastated.
that Prowess is a Delver deck. Is that what you're talking about, Alex? Like the Prowess deck?
The one we were talking about earlier with like 18 cantrips.
That's like a blitz deck.
Spells.
Like Sprite Dragon can act as a Delver, but yeah, like Soulscar Mage cannot act as a Delver.
Yeah.
You can't just like play Soulscar Mage, stop your opponent from doing anything, and it wins the game. Like, you have to be playing like a bunch of doofus sorceries and stuff.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, that's fair. Like, the classic style of tempo, it exists, but it is a much harder to make work, and you just need to be a little bit more proactive than you used to be in those formats. And part of that is because, like, well, Legacy Delver hasn't existed in any of these other formats, right? Like, the combination of Delver plus Wasteland and Force of Will and Daze just doesn't exist in any other format on purpose. Like, you don't want that in Modern, really.
But I mean, even something like standard blue-white Delver, where you have like Delver into, Ponder to flip it into, Vapor Snag their creature, attack, play Snapcaster, Vapor Snag, attack, Enchanter's Pike. Like, that is like pretty similar to Legacy Delver gameplay. I mean, obviously you don't have Wasteland Daze or Force of Will, but like Vapor Snag did a pretty okay stand-in. You had Mana Leak, you had like Runechanter's Pike to like finish them off. I mean, like, that deck did do that stuff somewhat more recently, but I think, like you said, we've been moving away from that type of gameplay.
Even like Autumn won with when they played the what's the blue enchantment that lets you draw?
The mono blue Curious
Obsession deck. That's not, and there's been like the blue green flash deck is a similar style of, it's not the same type of tempo, but it's like at the end of your turn, if you didn't do anything, I get to play a threat, and then every turn you have trouble doing something because I have counter magic up. My threat that I'm able to play at the end of your turn when you don't do anything kills you. And I think that's like tempo still exists. Tempo hasn't gone away. It's just it's not the same. And I do think that mitigating, like, Wizards realized that the way that they were losing people, like, every game that's ever existed based on Magic tries to beat the mana system. Magic is still winning, right? It still is probably one of the most profitable games ever invented. And part of that has to do with the fact that just people keep coming back to it. And more of the mana system is a benefit to it. But Wizards is realizing also, let's figure out ways to mitigate within game the mana system's flaws. And I think that's a lot of what we're seeing.
I mean, they're just trying to make the best game that they can. And, can you improve the mana system by, mitigating it through cards? And honestly, I do still get mana flooded and I do still get mana screwed in Magic games. So it's not
it's still frustrating, right? It still feels like when it happens, like, this sucks. This is not supposed to be, this isn't the way this is intended. But I do think, like, talking about some of the cards we just mentioned, right? Like Stormwing Entity is a great example of a card where that card kind of is constructed to be a little bit, it's supposed to sort of mimic a Delver in some ways, right? But it's also, you have to work a little harder to make it work. And they'd rather it cost 2. And they'd rather you be able to cast it for more later if you draw it and you can't cast the extra spell than to be able to, like, basically play it, manipulate it, have a 1-drop that attacks for 3, and then hold open counter magic and wasteland stuff. That is not a design space they're going into. And I think it is smarter going like long term.
They're doing it differently, right? Like, they also printed Terramander. Like, Terramander exists. That card is still able to do a pretty decent Delver imitation, right? Like
Sprite Dragon, like we talked about, you can do that thing. Or Brineborn Cutthroat is the one that the Flash decks use typically, where, like, that's your one threat. You counter all their spells and you Brazen Borrower to bounce their stuff and then you kill them. I mean, honestly, like, my description of what you were doing with Delver, some of those cards are more powerful, but you can do that with the Brineborn. You just play it, and then instead of mana leaking, your Lofty Denying or something, and then you're Brazen Borrowing to bounce their creature instead of Vapor Snagging, but it all kills them,
Yeah, I would argue it's is Vapor Snag or Brazen Borrower a better card?
It depends on if Snapcaster's in the format.
Ooh.
Did you say Vapor Snag or Brazen Borrower?
Yeah. I think it's in Modern. Brazen Borrower is
standard. In Standard,
yeah. So is Brazen Borrower better than Snapcaster Plagiarism Vapor Snag in Standard?
Snapcaster Vapor Snag's pretty good.
Yeah.
It is really good. The problem with Borrower is that if Borrower gets, like, thwarted in some way, if they have a way to sacrifice the creature in response, or if they can bounce the thing back to their hand or anything like that, it's a very bad experience. And I've been in situations where you're playing against the, like, Woe Strider deck or something like that. You know what I mean? And you're like, this Brazen Borrower is pretty worthless. I have to just use this as a creature.
Flying. Yeah, I mean,
it's, like, fine, but that's not why you're not playing it, because it's a 3/1 with flying for 3. You're playing it because you're going to get an extra effect out of a 3/1 for flying for 3. So I think probably Snag. I think like the velocity of cheaper spells can never be underestimated. I don't know. I'm always about playing something that costs less. It always feels like it's better.
I mean, I think Snapcaster Mage is more powerful than all the cards combined, and I think that's the issue, right? Like,
yep.
Because, like, I also think that format had Lightning Bolt in it, right? And, like, did it? When did Lightning Bolt rotate with Innistrad?
It was in M10 and M12. I think M11 was the core set that was there, because M12 had Preordain. I don't know.
M11 had Preordain.
People were not playing Lightning Bolt with Snapcaster in Standard that I remember. At least not for a 3-month rotation period.
I think it rotated right before.
Because I think that would be something people wanted to do. But
yeah, I don't think Bolt, like, Snap Bolt was a thing in Standard. Or I never remember that being in Standard.
Yep. Okay. Moving on. All right. So I think Brazen Borrower sees more play than Vapor Snag does in Modern, right?
It's the flexibility. Like, in formats where it's not a guarantee that creatures are going to be the thing you need to bounce.
Right.
Then,
like, I think Snapcaster Mage is more powerful than both, so it makes that hard. But I think if there was just, like,
Snapcaster is legal, and you're playing a Standard, Probably any standard for the most part. Would you rather have Brazen Bar or Vapor Snag in your deck? And I think if Snapcaster's already in my deck, might want the Snag. Unless there's like a standard deck in that format where you specifically need to bounce a non-land. I
would play both. I mean, like like why I get more than 2 cards. All right, so do we want to? So we have 2 options next. We can rank really quickly, and maybe we just do it quickly as part of this. The 5 best land destruction lands ever printed.
Ooh.
Is this really contentious?
It's not contentious. We're just officially saying our list.
Sure.
Right. I don't think it's contentious. Maybe it's contentious on where we place things, but I'll count down and you guys tell me. I'll start from best to worst. Because I think the best is the obvious. The best 2 is obvious without thinking about it. It's the next 3 that are harder. So number 1 in every format that it could be legal in, and if it was legal in other formats, it would just be maybe the best card. It's Strip Mine, I think, right? We can all agree.
Yeah.
Number 2,
like one of the most like unfair, least fun cards ever in the history of Magic that's ever been printed.
Fair. Number 2, Wasteland. Also pretty blatant, right? I don't think anyone's disagreeing with Wasteland being the second best.
Pretty savage, no doubt.
It's just Strip Mine in every format that isn't like
that's not true. You can play around it.
Yeah. It's a better for gameplay Strip Mine, but still bad for gameplay. All right, so now third, and I think this is where kind of the discussion went to online when we were talking about it and other people were talking about it. I think it's actually our preview card, Field of Ruin.
Well, we didn't officially get that as the first time, but we
got the second one. Though. We did officially preview Field of Ruin. It's just we previewed it for Theros Beyond Death.
I think if we're talking 60 card 1v1, yes. But Field of Ruin is nearly unplayable in Commander.
I disagree. So I had this conversation and Emma was in it. I forget which Emma. And what's worse? The average of my opponents going up a land or less, or me going down a land?
I mean, I guess
right.
So the difference is that I had to pay 2 mana to ramp everyone.
Well, but I also figured colors or free. I mean, okay, so for people, I guess we didn't say that the card that this is in contentiousness is Ghost Quarter, right? Like that's in Commander. In constructed 60 card formats, I think Field of Ruin is just better. Not better than Ghost Quarter strictly, because there are other things that you can do with it, but it's very good.
I would Commander. Why is generally
better?
Why is Tech Edge not better in Commander?
Tech Edge, because it's just better than Field of Ruin is maybe a debate. I think it's more placement on this list. I don't think Tech Edge is on the.
I think Tech Edge is better than Field of Ruin and Ghost Quarter in Commander.
Yeah, it feels like it, right? Because four lands is like easy and like
sure, but it's
presumably you're sitting there.
So much worse in every other format of Magic. That
land destruction is also not that great. In, like one-to-one land destruction is not that great in Commander because you have so many opponents. Like if it's the 3 of us plus Marshall playing, and I Tech Edge Marshall, I'm down a land, Marshall's down a land, you and Alex are just up a land compared to us, and I put myself in that position for some reason. The only reason you really want to do it is if they have like a Gaia's Cradle or like something nasty going on that you got to get rid of, Homeward Path or something,
or a Maze of Ith, or like there's a lot of good Ancient Ruin or so
ruins. Like a lot of the time you'll play Strip Mine because it's basically free and it's just a great card and it's flexible, but Tech Edge is not as much that, and neither are any of these. They're just not as good, and how many of that effect do you really need when it's not even good in the format? But I think that Ghost Quarter is better than Field of Ruin in Commander because it puts you at more or less the same disadvantage relative to your opponents, except that it doesn't cost any mana to activate.
I also think that there's some truth to the idea that as good as Field of Ruin is, like, you know, and that ability to activate and get your land, because I do think like so you tap, sacrifice it, pay 2, and then you get an untapped source. So it's effectively costing you 2 mana to get this done. There is something to be said for just like Ghost Quarter, play Ghost Quarter, sacrifice Ghost Quarter, costs me nothing other than just this land. And I think I guess it depends what kind of a table you're at. It depends how competitive the table is and how much you need your mana, and like mana efficiency matters. But I feel like, for instance, like in the games of CDH we were playing, like we all were very interested in using all of our mana, and I don't think you would want Field of Ruin in one of those games. I think you'd want Ghost Quarter. I mean, I think you'd want
I think Field of Ruin in CDH is not what you're on about. I think that there's two things. One, mana fixing is not to be ignored, right? Like with Ghost Quarter, I'm just down a land. This I can use to say, oh, I need to get a white land, or if I'm playing green-white, I only have green sources, this lets me get my white source if I need it, or vice versa. So that is something that's beneficial. Two, since Field of Ruin has been printed, Ghost Quarter's playability in Modern has like
plummeted. Way less, right? Yeah.
Like it's still played, but it's played in
Field of Ruin is, for Modern, it's 3. It is number 3 in Modern. I agree with you.
But I think Field of Ruin is 3. Like, since both of them aren't great in Commander, I think Field of Ruin has more utility in Commander than Ghost Quarter does, because it does have also political play to it. It does help people out, and it does fix your mana and make it so you don't.
I don't want to help anyone out.
Well, that's because you're playing mono red, make everyone not do anything. The deck, you have dampening spirit.
I could make it worse.
You could. I could. I'm not arguing against it being.
I'm not playing like a stacks deck.
Yeah, but you don't want people to get lands with Field of Ruin.
I don't want anybody to do anything that is like. I don't want anybody.
You also
to do
don't
that.
need. You don't need color. You don't need color fixing in your mono red deck.
I don't.
You're not like, oh man, I'm missing my other color source in my all mountains and one land that doesn't have for mountains.
I want everybody to be able to do something, right? I just don't want them to do that much of anything.
That's fair.
Like, you can do some stuff on your turn, just don't go wild, you know? Don't.
All right. So I think then Ghost Quarter is second, right? Like the fact that it's like has been the third best for a long time. It's really good with stuff like Leonin Arbiter. It does weird combo-y things in the world of being able to kill stuff like Flagstones or target your own indestructible land to go to your graveyard, and then you open the vaults. Not open the vaults. What was the Second Sunrise? Bringing it back. Like it was more of a combo engine in Eggs than it was a removal spell.
Cheaper to activate.
Yeah. And then you have then they get to the fifth spot, and this is the one that I think there was some disagreement on. I personally think it's Rishadan Port.
Port is sweet. Port is really sweet.
Other things for Kassetchin is Tech Edge. Tech Edge could be the fifth. And then
just go Port.
What?
Third.
Yeah. I mean, it also, I guess it depends, again, if we're talking, what format are we talking about here? Because
of all time,
obviously can't even play Port Modern. So like, I think of all time, though, there's an argument that
be the third best, I think.
I think there's an argument that Port is better than all of these. I hadn't even really considered it.
It's not better
than
all
of these. Sorry.
I don't think it's better than Wasteland either. Like decks aren't playing.
No.
Yeah.
Number 3. I think we all agree 1 and 2 are 1 and 2. I'm saying I think Port could be number 3, to be honest.
What's weird about Port is that it gets a lot worse when you don't also have Wasteland.
And it gets worse in formats that we described at the beginning of the podcast, or not at the beginning, in the middle. But like Uro and Port have relationships that don't get along. Right? Like when people are just able to play as many lands as they want, and 4 and 5 drops or what, like, not necessarily 4 and 5 drops, but plays involving more lands than 3 are important.
Yeah,
or when the game matters, Port gets a lot worse.
I think you're right. I think Port is exactly number 3 when Wasteland is legal and when Wasteland is not legal. Like if they just printed Port into Standard or something, would anybody play it in Modern over? Or if it was in Modern Horizons 2 or I don't know, something like that. Would you play it instead of Field of Ruin in like anything? I don't.
No, nor good.
I think because I think your point is pretty strong, Michael.
Deck?
Yeah,
in the Death and Taxes deck, you're looking to do Leonin Arbiter stuff.
Well, I'm saying you would play 4 Ghost Quarter, and then this would be like its relationship with Wasteland in the Death and Taxes deck works with its relationship with Ghost Quarter.
Yes, and it allows you to you can port their fetch so that you can waste it, or you can like port the basics that they get, but they probably don't have that many, so you're like, choking them with Wasteland while you're also keeping them off of basics. And it's better when your opponent doesn't have a lot of lands. So if you're already putting pressure on lands with like Leonin Arbiter, Ghost Quarter, or Wastelands, then it's better.
I also think that if you are playing Modern and if Rishadan Port's legal, even in that deck, to be honest, I think it's probably good in Death and Taxes because of just what you guys are talking about, but that's maybe the only situation I can really think of. I guess I could see it in like Blue-White Control, maybe as like a one of if they're trying to get ahead and they're just kind of keeping you down a little, but Modern's pretty cheap. It's pretty efficient. And if you're not Wastelanding, Rishadan Port takes a lot of resources to try to slow people down. And I feel like you try that once or twice, and if they have an instant to get around you, I feel like you actually fall behind really fast in tempo trying to use Rishadan Port in Modern. I just think like the efficiency of the spells in Modern, they're like pretty similar to Legacy in terms of their cost. I think that the difference there.
I think more decks play Ghost Quarter than Rishadan Port in Legacy. Like I can't say that with any factual thing, and I hope someone in the comments please lets me know. Like because there's one deck that plays. There are a few styles of decks that play Rishadan Port, but I've seen Ghost Quarter as a like fifth answer to lands that are problematic than I've ever seen Rishadan Port as a like fifth Wasteland. If you're playing a Rishadan Port,
they do different things.
Yeah. I guess my point is like Rishadan Port is a style of card for decks. It is very good at what it does and is probably the most powerful for what it's doing, but it is pigeonholed to its playstyle versus Ghost Quarter, which is more versatile than that in older formats.
The other thing about Modern that makes Rishadan Port bad is the existence of Tron. Like Port doesn't really do anything against Tron and any of these other options. Like heck, even the really bad ones, the pay 4 tap sack destroy target land, whatever that card is, at least you can take them off Tron. But Rishadan Port is like, I tap your tower, I guess. I know you still have 900 mana.
I think Port also, where Port's interesting over the others is like, so, let's just, because we're jumping around formats here, but let's just say we're talking about playing, Highlander or something like that. And I know I'm trying to kill you, and eventually you might get a Maze of Ith. I know your deck plays it. There's a good chance I'm going to, not be able to kill you the way I want to with this, like, let's say Dark Depths token or something. Obviously if I have a strip mine or I have anything else and I burn it early on your other problematic land, it's gone. With Port, it's just a land that sits there. I can be, slowing you down. And then when you finally do have your Maze of Ith, I can tap it and kill you. And it's been valuable to me all game doing something else.
But the trick is, what if it's not a Maze of Ith? What if it's a Caracas and you're trying to kill them with a Dark Depths token? Like same scenario, except instead of Maze of Ith, they have Caracas. Now you wish you had that strip mine or that Ghost Quarter or something, right? Because the Port is going to tap the Caracas and they're just going to be like, okay, like untap, get it, right?
Yeah, but if I try to strip mine your Caracas and you tap it to kill my token, I guess I don't make the token until I've strip mined your Caracas.
Correct.
But
yeah. But I guess you can like, if you have the mana, you can like tap the Caracas, make the token on their end step, and then kill them.
Well, there's a scenario that, like the scenario that both of them are bad. They're both bad, right? Like them playing Caracas after you make the token. It doesn't matter if you're playing Rishadan Port or Strip Mine. They bounce your token. They have priority. So the answer is, what's better on the other end when it's good? And I think Ghost Quarter is better than because Strip Mine's obviously better than Rishadan Port, but Ghost Quarter is better than Rishadan Port most of the time. Except for,
where do we rank Encroaching Wastes? That's the question.
Oh wait,
that's the card I was talking about. Encroaching Wastes.
I think Tectonic Edge would be 6, right? It does be.
I think Tech Edge.
I think the problem with Tech Edge is it just is outclassed by these other options. I think Sam mentioned that his like Galaxy Brain best land destruction spell was Thespian Stage.
Sam Lewis,
yes, Judge Sam.
Well, let me ask you guys this:
prominent judge Sam.
What if this card existed? What would you guys think about this card?
You're not even reacting to the Thespian Stage. Is the best one.
Why is that?
Because it destroys and creates a 20/20 with your mana. It's destroying 2 lands whenever you use it.
What if this card existed? What if it was a colorless land, enters the battlefield tapped? When it enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice this land to destroy target land. Can't use it for mana the turn it comes down, and if it untaps, it's no longer going to be a card that can destroy something. But you could strip mine somebody in any format turn 1 by just playing this land.
I think it still needs to be non-basic. And
I think if you can only use it the turn it comes down, so you're okay. Maybe it has to be non-basic, otherwise it's just not fun.
Being able to strip mine for free on turn 1 is real good.
I would say that Strip Mine and Wasteland, often you just use them the turn you play them anyway.
Yeah.
Especially in formats where your opponent also has access to those. Because there's been times where I tap my Wasteland and then my opponent plays Wasteland's my Wasteland or something to protect their colored sources, or you don't want to tap your Wasteland if you can avoid it anyway. So I the optimal play is turn 1, fetch for Tropical Island, play Delver or whatever. Turn 2, Wasteland their land, right? Right away. It's the same functionality basically.
So what if it's a colorless? Okay, what if it's a colorless land?
Obviously better than that, but I don't think that's so much worse than Wasteland.
What if it's a colorless land, enters the battlefield tapped?
We forgot that could be in 5th place, but you go finish your thing.
What if it's a colorless land, enters the battlefield tapped? It does tap to add 1, but it enters tapped. And when it enters the battlefield, you may pay 1 and sacrifice this land to destroy target land. So you can't do it on turn 1. You can turn to it. It costs you your full second turn.
I think they want you to avoid being able to blow up lands under 3 lands and then them be mana screwed because of it.
So that card, Ben, is kind of just Boom from Boom Bust.
True, but it's, yeah. I mean, I love Boom.
It's not that
good. We forgot Dust Bowl.
Oh yeah, Dust Bowl's real sweet. Dust Bowl's real sweet.
Yeah. I think Dust Bowl was what people were arguing was the 5th best, and I was arguing Rishadan Port over it. I still think Rishadan Port's isn't more in the top 5, and Dust Bowl's number 6. I think Dust Bowl's better than Tech Edge.
I think you have to have played Legacy to appreciate Rishadan Port.
That's fair.
You just played Modern and/or Commander or Standard or whatever. It's a non-Legacy formats. You're not going to appreciate it
That's
much.
fair. That's fair.
Because in Legacy, it's really good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Is it good in Vintage? I don't know enough about Vintage to be able to.
No, because everybody says Moxen and stuff. Those types of effects are not even as good. You still play Strip Mine and Wasteland because you can, but
right. You'll get them. Yeah. That's not
and you need to hit Workshop and Bazaar of Baghdad and just these outrageous things that are not even Magic cards, but Port isn't good against them.
Right.
Cards I guess it's good against Workshop, or it's okay against Workshop, except that they already have something disgusting in play.
That's actually it for the episode. We were out of time, so I want to do a last minute shout outs. Big thank you once again. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Do we miss a land? We'd love to get ideas from you on how the new logo looks. Do you like it? What are, now that we're no longer just talking about Modern officially as the only thing, what things would you like us to talk about? What other formats, what other things in those formats would you like to hear our opinions on? Now that big shout out once again to our Patreon. Make sure to check it out. It's how we're able to make this happen. It's how Marshall is able to edit. The fact that cards were showing up on the screen. And so even if I forget what a card is called, you guys don't forget it. That's how it happens. So definitely check out our Patreon. Thank you to all our Patreon members. They get cool. We have been doing movie podcast content for them every week. So even if you our patron, but you don't listen to the raw feed, check it out because there's a whole extra section just for you on Patreon, exclusive to patrons. Make sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram and all those places. I'm at Kess Wiley.
You guys can find me at Ben Bateman Media, and please go check out my new stuff I'm doing over on Nerds and Suits, youtube.com/Nerds and Suits. I'm doing that for a few months. Very proud of what I'm doing over there.
I am at Dudard, DUDARDD on Twitter.
And then make sure to follow me on Twitch. So we do the Commander stream every Monday night. This last week, you can find it on the channel. We did CDH was playing with Power. Ben is currently just kicking people's butts, but you got to watch this week to see if he continues that streak with Najila. And then we'll be on their channel tomorrow. So check out Playing with Power. We're going to be slinging some spells. I have a new Blood Pod deck. I've realized that I just am only happy if I'm playing Blood Pod or Birthing Pod in every format. So I'm super stoked to take that for a spin tomorrow for the first time. So that's Saturday. Bringing up a calendar because I don't know dates.
Also a non-blue CEDH deck, which is true. A non-blue vintage deck, in that when you see it, you're always ooh, how did they not play blue?
It's the 29th. So we'll be on the Playing with Power channel on the 29th. Make sure to follow there. And then on our Twitch, twitch.tv/ or my Twitch, Kess Wiley is where we stream the Commander content we do every Monday. This next week, we are being featured by Wizards. We're going to be one of their featured creators, which is going to be really sweet. And so instead of doing Commander, we're going to do some arena content. Ben's going to be on his streaming, so he'll be on Ben Bateman streaming. I'll be at Kess Wiley. We're going to battle it off. Michael is going to be one of the angels over one of our shoulders, telling us how we should be playing better. We're going to be playing probably some Highlander Arena Gauntlet, which is the 6 or 4 decks, 1v1 format that we've been loving playing. So definitely check that out. And we'll be doing a bunch of streaming next week in general.
If there's anything else you want to see a stream. We want to limit to arena because that's what Wizards wants to see from us when they're featuring us. But we could do historic, we could do draft, we could do standard, we could do Highlander Arena Gauntlet or Gladiator or Brawl or whatever. So let us know.
Yep. So super stoked and excited to see you guys in future content things that we're doing and really hyped. Thanks so much. Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Michael. Thank you, Marshall. Thank you, patrons. Thank you, person who helped to design the logo that Ben is going to shout out right now.
Jacob Patrick at JPDs on Instagram, or follow him on Twitter. He does incredible stuff for the Movie Trivia Schmodown, for my stuff over in Action, and now he's helping us out here on the MMcast. It would mean a lot to me if you guys just give him a big shout out, telling him how much you like the new logo. Thank you so much.
And thank you to Playing with Power for joining us last week on the Commander with 2 capital M's stream, and we're excited to be on your channel this weekend. Thanks, everybody, and we'll talk to you guys next week.